So solve by completing the square. You take half of -6, which is -3, and you ask -3 squared plus what would be equal to 1? What is that? -3 squared is positive 9. 9 plus -8 gives you 1. So this will be the completing the square. Move the -8 to the other side. And if you take the square away, what happens? You get plus or minus. That's important. You have to have plus or minus. Square root of 8. And then whenever you have a square root, check if there's any square factors in there. And most likely it'll be 4. So if what's inside the square root is divisible by 4, you have to take the 4 out. 8 is 4 times 2, right? And that 4 comes out as what? 2. And I will take points off if you don't have that 2 outside. Okay, you have to be able to do this. Move the 3 to the other side, and that gives you the answer. So that's a simple question. The second question is a bit harder. To solve this equation, you have to square both sides. And when you see this x minus 4 squared, notice that I'm not squaring each of them separately. That's a no-no. It doesn't work if you do that. I'm squaring the entire left side, getting rid of the square root. Entire right side gets squared. And when you expand this, you have two options. One would be to use x minus 4 times x minus 4, and you FOIL this out. But I don't want you to use that, even if you're not going to get points off for doing it that way. It's still better if you can use this formula. A minus b squared equals to a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. Okay? There's another version for the plus. You have to be able to use this. And that gives you x squared. And this one says it's negative 2 times the first times the second. So negative 2 times the first times the second. X times 4. And then the last one has to be squared. So it's 4 squared plus 4 squared. Notice that it doesn't matter if I put negative 4 squared or 4 squared. They both give you positive if you square it, right? And that gives you x squared. 2 times 4 is 8. So you get x squared minus 8x plus 16 on the left side, and on the right side, and the left side is negative 4x plus 28. Let's move 4x to the right by adding the 4x. What is negative 8x plus 4x?
Negative 4x.
Okay, negative 4x. And then you should also subtract 28. So you have to do 16 minus 28, which is same as negative of 28 minus 16, right? Which is 12, negative 12. Okay, so you have negative 12. If you subtract 28 both sides, you're going to get negative 28, so the left side will be 0. Now tell me two numbers whose product is negative 12 and whose sum is negative 4. What's that? Yes?
Negative 2.
Yes. So you have negative 6 and then positive 2, yeah. Plus 2 equals to 0, and then you have x minus 6 equals to 0, and then x equals to 6, x plus 2 equals to 0, x equals to negative 2. Okay, so if you stop here, do you get full credit?
No.
No, why not?
You have to prove your answer.
You have to, see, anytime you have a square root or fractions or logs in your equation, you have to make sure that your solutions are solutions by plugging in and checking. Because some are not. Some happens to be not a solution. So if I plug in 6, let's check that one. When x is equal to 6, you get negative 4 times 6 plus 28 on the left side, and then you have 6 minus 4. 4 times 6 is 24. What's 28 minus 24? 28 minus 24 is 4. And 6 minus 4 is 2. Is this correct? Yes. And then let's do x equals to -2. In that case, you have -4 times, sorry, you get -4 times -2 plus 28 equals to -2 minus 4. And then this one is positive 8. 8 plus 28 is 36. And then -2 minus 4 is -6. Is this correct? This is not
That's
correct
not correct.
because anytime you have a square root, it only gives you the positive value. So this is positive, this is negative, so this is not correct. Therefore, this is no good, and the answer will only be x equals to 6. X equals to -2 will not be a solution because this doesn't work. Okay, so this next question we have an inequality. Do you remember how I used to explain solving inequalities? I would always say,
Something about equality, change it to.
yeah, inequalities are hard. So instead of solving inequalities, you want to solve
Equality.
equalities. Right? So you, instead of solving this, you go and solve equal sign. Okay? Now let's get rid of -4 by dividing by -4 both sides. You get absolute value of -3x plus 2. Negative divided by negative is positive, so 28 divided by 4 gives you 7. Okay. Now when you look at this equation, think of it this way. This is something, right? It's something whose absolute value is 7. What could this something be?
Positive or negative, right?
Yeah, positive or -7. This could be either 7 or -7, right? So, in general, this is true. It might be helpful to remember this, that if you have absolute value of anything equals to another b, and then if b is positive, right, then it always gives you a equals to b or a equals to negative b. Now, it's important that b is positive because if b is negative, what happens? Absolute value of a equals to b. Can this happen?
No.
Negative cannot equal to the absolute value, so this would be no solution. So an example of this would be like if you have 2x minus 1 absolute value equals to -3. Does this have a solution? No. All right, but that's like usually that doesn't happen, so assuming that you have positive, just make sure that you know that whatever you get here, you put plus and minus, right? So we're going to say -3x plus 2 has to be equals to 7, or -3x plus 2 equals to -7. Two cases. And you get answers for each. So let's see, if you subtract 2 both sides, you get 5 on the right. Divide by -3, you get x equals to -5/3. On this side, if you subtract 2, -3x, -7 minus 2 is -9, and you divide by -3, you get x equals to +3. Because negative cancels, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. Okay, so, good. We found the solution of the equation. Is that it?
No.
No, we're told to solve the inequality, we just solved the equality, right? So what do you do after this?
Plug. Right?
Plug in, but what values do you plug in? There's something that you have to do before that. You have to draw the number line, put those two numbers, -5/3 and 3, and now you have to pick test values, okay? So give me a value between -5/3 to 3.
1.
1. I like 0 better. 1 works too, okay? 0. Give me a value after 3.
5.
5. Yeah. Or 4 is better, it's closer. You could also do 10, 5. It doesn't matter which one you choose. Now, -5/3, some of you will be able to see that that's -1.666, and then you can see that -2 will be on the left side. But if you're not so sure, then you can just choose something that's very far. Choose -10. And that still works as well. So you just pick any number that fits in each of these intervals, okay? And then you plug it. Okay, so let's now plug in one by one. Okay. So for x equals to -10, what does it do if I plug in -10 in there? It's -4 times f is over that value of -3 times -10 plus 2, 32, right? And that'll be 32 times -4, that's -128. Is that right or wrong?
Wrong.
Right, because this is a bigger negative value. Bigger negative values are on the left side of this number, so that's true. And then you're going to put a check mark because it worked, okay? Now let's move on for x equals to 0. And in that case, you get -4, absolute value -3 times 0 plus 2. That's equals to -28. 0 times anything is 0, so you have plus 2. 2 times -4 is -8. Is this true?
No.
No, it's not true. So this one doesn't work. Put an X there. Okay. And then finally, x equals to 4 is going to give you -4. 4 times -3, so I'll just skip ahead. It'll be -12 plus 2. Yeah, -10, so you get -40 less or equals to -28. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, so it does work. Okay, good. So after getting all this, yes.
Isn't it -12 plus 2 -10?
Yeah, but then you have an absolute value, so it's positive 10.
Oh, sorry.
10 times -4 is -40. Yeah, good question, yes. All right, so don't ignore this absolute value. It's important. Actually, that's the first time the calculation does do something. The absolute value does do something here. Here it doesn't matter for these. Okay, so we now see that the valid intervals are, how many intervals are valid here? Two. There's one here, there's one there. Okay? Okay, so now let's try to draw write down the interval. So we're ready to write the answer already, right? Okay, how do you express this in interval notation? Where does it start? Negative infinity. Where does it end? -5/3. Now, another crucial question. Should -5/3 be included or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because this has an equal sign, it is included, right? If this was a strict inequality, then you would put a round bracket, okay? It will be a parenthesis instead of that, okay? But this has an equal sign included, so this endpoint is included, all right? That will be an important thing to remember, okay? And then the other one, again, would include 3 and goes up to where? It starts from 3 and then goes to positive infinity, right? If you have more than one interval, what do? You put union U in between. So that will be the answer for this inequality. Let's try this question. The length of the rectangle is 2.5 centimeters less than twice the width. Find the area if perimeter is 43 centimeters. The crucial skill here is to translate a sentence into math notation. And let me first challenge you by thinking of this is. What should I do with this is? How do you translate that into math? Equal sign. Good. And then it's really saying that this is equal to the other one. That's what it means. If you look at this, this is actually the complicated one. It's quite big. So you want to break this down into a smaller one. And I see here that there is twice the width. This is one thing, right? So let's try to write that into math. But to do that, you need to pick variables. So for the length, I'll assign L. For the width, I'll assign W. You could also use X and Y, okay? All right. So how do you write twice the width?
2W.
2W, right? It's double of W. Good. So you think of this as now 2W. 2W. And then the next thing is, how do you say 2.5 centimeters less than 2W?
Minus
Minus
2.5.
2.5.
Yeah, that's good. Right. So if 2W minus 2.5 is obvious to you, that's great. If not, try to make a different sentence out of this with something that's a number. Like, what's 2.5 less than 10? Okay, so it was like you had $10 and you spent $2.50. Now you're 2.5 less than $10. That's in your pocket, right? You would subtract the two numbers, right? You would do 10 minus 2.5. So if you put numbers and just think a little bit more, it's usually easy to figure out what's going on. Okay, so that's what's going to happen on the right side. On the left side, it says length of a rectangle, but that's just L, right? So I'm just going to put L there. Is this okay? All good? All right. Now, here's the thing. You're trying to find the area. What is area? How do you calculate area? Length times width. Base times height, in our case, length times width. So you need to know, to answer this question, you need to know what L times W is. This one only has one equation for two unknowns L and W, which means we need another equation, right? If you have two unknowns, you have to have two equations. So you go back and read the question. Oh, and one nice thing is, see, we've successfully encoded the entire first sentence as this one. Once you do that, you don't have to pay attention to the first part anymore. You can just think about this one. And I see another number that we didn't make use of, the 43. So this probably will give us a relationship between L and W, right? So that's the way that you should think. I need to find another equation that involves L and W, which you also uses the 43. Okay? So I'm saying this because a lot of people, when they solve this, they would say P equals to 43. That doesn't achieve anything. You need to say something with L and W. And to see what's going on, what you want to do is you want to draw a picture. And let's say this part is W and that's L. Could also be switched, it doesn't really matter. Can you express the perimeter using this picture? Using L and W?
Yeah.
What is it?
2 times width plus 2 times length.
Yes, because this side also will be length and this side will also be width. You will end up with 2W plus 2L as your perimeter, and that has to equal to 43. And now you can see that L and W got involved. You have an equation for L and W, you have an equation for L and W. Super. Now you should be able to solve this. Okay, so now you have a system of equations. How do you solve system of equations?
Put one on top of the other.
Solve for one of them, right? There's another method where you put top of the other and you subtract right. There are two methods. You should know how to do both. But one that always works is you solve for one of the variables and you plug into the next one, right? And since this is already solved for L, what we can do is we can replace this L here by 2W plus 2.5. So let's see what that gives us. It's 2W plus 2 times 2W minus 2.5 equals to 43. And that's 2W plus 4W, 2 times 2.5 is minus 5 equals to 43. Add the 5 to the other side. 2W plus 4W is 6W. 43 plus 5 gives you 48. We're almost there. Dividing by 6 gives you W equals to 8. And then, what about L?
Plug it in.
You plug it in. L is 2 times 8 minus 2.5. And that's 16 minus 2.5. That's going to be 13.5. Oh, remember, this final exam, you're supposed to bring a scientific calculator, not any graphing calculator. Graphing calculators would be banned, okay? Make sure you bring them. So, this one you can just use a calculator to calculate, right? 2 times 8 is 16 minus 2.5, you'll get that. And then finally, your area would be 8 times 13.5, which is like 4 times 27, which is 108 square centimeters. You would see a few questions involving finding the equation of the line. and this is one of them. When you find the equation of the line, you should always think of the point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals to m times x minus x1. Now, what the point slope form teaches us is that to get an equation of the line, you need two things. One is x1 comma y1 is a point on the line, and you also need the slope, m. And it's just like if you're hungry and you want to make grilled cheese, what do you need? You need bread and cheese, right? If you're missing one or the other, you can't have grilled cheese. Same with the line equation. If you want the line equation, you need a point and you need the slope. Right? Now look at the question. What are we already given? Point, negative 2 comma 4. That's given. Right? So that's easy. What's not given yet? Slope. That means we somehow have to use this information that the line is parallel to this equation here to come up with a slope for that line, right? Okay. How does this give us the slope? For two lines to be parallel, what do we know?
The slope has to be the same.
Their slope has to be the same. So what we do is we solve this for y. First subtract 4x to the other side. And then divide by 3, you get negative 4/3 x. And then 6 divided by 3 is 2.
And there you go.
And then this is going to be your slope. All right. And now we have point, we have the slope. That means we can have our delicious line equation. Right? Y minus 4 equals negative 4/3, x minus negative 2. Okay, the question also asks us to write this in slope-intercept form, so that means you have to solve for y. Okay, so let's multiply this out, so that's going to be, rather than that, let's just multiply by 3, okay? I don't like this denominator, so let's destroy them. Multiply everything by 3. 3 goes here, so you get 3y minus 12. And that removes the 3. And then negative is plus, right? Okay. All right. Multiply that out, you get 3y minus 12 equals to negative 4x minus 8. Move this over here, so, no, that's okay. Move the 12 to the other side, so 3y equals to negative 4x plus 12 minus 8 is positive 4, right? And now you divide 3 both sides, and there's your answer. Your answer is y equals to negative 4/3 x plus 4/3. Okay, a similar question, numbers, and when you try to find slope from 2 points, try to do it my way. I know there are many other formulas for it, but the way I like to do it is always the terminal minus initial, so this minus this, right? You subtract. And 1 minus negative 2 is? What's 1 minus negative 2? 3. 1 minus 3 is? Negative 2. And this first number is your change of the x values, and this second number is a change of y values. Okay? And it's actually quite important that you write these in. You want to write that this is change of x and that's change of y, because it's sometimes confusing, right? So you have that, and then you have m equals the change of y over change of x, which is negative 2 over 3. That's your slope. Okay. Now that's almost the answer, because we have a point and a slope, right? We can choose either, but it's easier to choose one. Those are simpler numbers. You can choose the first one. At the end of the day, it will be the same. Okay, so you have y minus 1 equals to negative 2/3 x minus 1. Except that this question has a strange request. It says it wants to find the form ax plus by equals to c. This is also called the standard form. And this has its advantages over the other forms. It's easier to find the intercepts if you put it in this form. Okay, so let me just show you how that's done. First, get rid of the denominator, okay? So step one, get rid of the denominator. Same thing, multiply by 3. You get 3y minus 3 equals to negative 2x minus 1, right? 3 is gone. 3 is multiplied to the left. It's gone. And then you expand this out. You get 3y minus 3 equals to negative 2x plus 2. And then now you have this. All you have to do now is to move the x and y's on the left side, constant term on the right side. That's all the request is, okay? So I'm going to move it here, move that there, and then you get 2x. Negative 2x will come over here to become plus 2x plus 3y. And then 2 and then 3 goes to the right to become plus 3, so 2 plus 3 will be 5. Okay, so that's called the standard form. That is the answer. And let me just continue with my comment. What I was trying to say is that, let's say you're given a line equation in this form and you're asked, try to draw the graph of this line. This is easier to draw than other cases because you can just set x equals to 0. That gives you what? 3y equals to 5, which gives you y equals to 5 over 3, right? And then when you set y equals to 0 instead, you get, this is 0, so you get 2x equals to 5, which gives you x equals to 5 over 2. And then when you have this, the x's, just plot those 2 points. Let's say this is 5 over 2, that's about 2.5, right? And 5 over 3 is smaller, it's something somewhere here, 5 over 3, it's like 1.67. And then you take those 2 points and connect them, that's your graph. So because this format makes it easy to find the x and y intercepts, it's quicker to draw the graph. That's why people prefer this one. Okay. Yeah, but this is what the question wanted, that was all. Okay, this is a word problem, but because it's very real, it's not that hard. I mean, some of you might just be able to write immediately the answer for A. So let's see if you can do it. So can you write down the equation for how much A would be charging if X minutes were used?
36 plus 0.07x.
Right? You can do that. Yeah. If you can just write that right away, this will be a rather simple question. Now some of you might not be able to write it right away, but in that case you just have to make assumptions. Just go back and think about some scenarios. What if you used 100 minutes? How much would you be charged? 100 minutes, what do you do? 100 times 0.07, so you end up with $7, and $7 plus 36, so you'll be charged $43, right? And that anyone can do. But then you think back what you did and think about what you did with the number 100. You multiplied to 0.07 and then you added 36. So if that 100 was switched to x, then you would do 0.07 times x plus 36, which is exactly this equation. Isn't that right? Yeah. So I don't think there's anyone in here who can't do that. Okay. So that's what you'll get for A, and then B would be 48 plus 0.02x for the same reason. So that's the answer for A. You don't even have to write down any work, it's just straightforward. Okay? But now, at some point, when you use very little minutes, you see that because the base fee for company B is higher, it will be cheaper to go with company A, right? But then, let's say you have a lonely grandma who asks you to call her every day for maybe 30 minutes or something, and then you end up having to call her a lot, right? In that case, which one's better? You're probably you'll probably be paying less with B, right? Okay. So there must be an exact minutes where you end up paying exactly the same amount whether you go with company A or B, And that's the question. What minute is that? Okay. How would you solve that? What do you think? How can we solve part B?
Set them equal to each other.
Yeah, because that's the question. When is this cost same as this cost? So we set them equal to each other. 36 plus 0.07x equals to 48 plus 0.02x. And then I would subtract 0.02x both sides to first get 0.05x. Then I would also subtract 36 both sides, and 48 minus 36 would be 12, right? And then you would use your calculator to find out 12 divided by 0.05, which comes out to 240 minutes. Oh, good. Okay, this next question. Again, finding the equation of line, you need a point which you're given, and you need the slope from here, so let's solve for y. Negative 2y equals to negative 5x plus 2. Divided by negative 2, you get y equals to negative 5 over negative 2x plus 2 over negative 2. And that's 5 over 2x minus 1. Okay, now question. What slope do we use? Do we use this?
No.
No, why not?
It's perpendicular.
It's perpendicular. How do you get the perpendicular slope? You flip top and bottom and then?
Negative.
Negative. Okay, so you have to know the perpendicular slope is equal to negative reciprocal. So you take 5 over 2, you flip upside down, and then you put a minus in front. That's going to be your slope n. Alright? So we have everything. We have the slope, we have the point. We just put it into the point slope form. Which gives you y plus 2 equals negative 2 over 5x plus 6 over 5. Subtract 2, and then you're going to get, well, I'll do this quickly, but you should be able to do that, right? Minus 4 over 5. That's 10 over 5, so yeah, this is going to be your answer. Okay, I've omitted some numbers that are not used in the exam. But this will be enough information to determine the question. To solve this question, you have to know the meaning of this small circle. What is that? What's the small circle? It's called the it's called composition, and its meaning is that one is inside of the other, right? So this one is same as f g of 11. And that's all you have to know. Once you know that, everything else follows. So what is g of 11?
13.
It's 13. It's g with 11 gives you 13. So replace g of 11 by 13. What's f of 13?
Negative 8.
F and 13 is negative 8, so the answer is negative 8. What does this mean? You first write it as a parenthesis. Yeah, so to solve these questions, you should always write this first, okay? And I know some of you can be just quick enough to just point things out and get the answer right away, but then what if you make a mistake? If you don't have anything written in between, I can't give you partial credit, so that's dangerous. So you should at least write this first. Okay? Yeah. Yes?
There is no negative 4 in the x.
Oh, sorry, this should be negative 4. Yeah. Okay, and then that's f of 11, and f of 11 is negative 4. This one with g of negative 2. What's g of negative 2? 10, right? It's asking for g of 10. What's g of 10? 7. Okay, this will be g of f of 10. What's f of 10? 13. What's g of 13?
-2.
Negative 2. Done. So it's a simple question. The only thing that you have to be able to do is to rewrite this small circle as a parenthesis. Yeah, so sometimes what I think is like, I imagine myself taking an egg and breaking it into 2, and that it gives you this 2 parentheses. That's how I imagine myself taking this small circle. I break it into 2, that becomes this one. Yeah. It's kind of a cute way of thinking of this. Question is, what's g of f and what's f of g? Okay, so let's try this out. You first rewrite this as g of f of x, just like before. And then, since f of x is this thing, we put g of negative 2 over negative 3x plus 4. Now this point is the first point of challenge because many people don't know how to take this function and plug in this complicated thing into this g, right? And there's something I told you in class, which is always use two-step method when you plug in something complicated into a function. Do you remember what that is? Maybe you remember in different contexts, but I said, first, copy the definition down exactly as it is, except,
Leave the space off.
yeah, whenever you see an x, you put a blank. Okay, that's step 1. So you see that I copied this definition exactly here with x being blanked out. Do you see that? That's step 1. You should always follow this procedure if you want to get this correct. I've seen many people not following that and end up getting a totally wrong answer. Okay, once you have that blank, what do you fill this in with? What you're plugging in here. So that thing goes in here. You get negative 2 over negative 3x plus 4. And you just continue on. Now here we have a negative 2 multiplied to a fraction. Excuse me, let me rewrite this. So negative 2 is multiplied to a fraction. When you multiply a number to a fraction, where does it get multiplied? Only on the top, not to the bottom. Okay, that's really important. It only gets multiplied to the top. So you get 4 over negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4 over negative 3x plus 4 minus 3. So that's pretty good. But this is still not the answer, but because you have to simplify. You have to simplify to get full credit. So how do you simplify when you have a fraction inside a fraction? You multiply top and bottom by the denominator to get rid of the denominator, right? We want to kill that denominator. Okay, yeah. Maybe I'm too violent for YouTube, but I don't know. We multiply this top and bottom because when this gets multiplied to this, it's going to kill that denominator, right? So here's what we have. I have negative 12x plus 16. And the bottom, when this is multiplied to this is going to go away. 1. And you just get 4, right? And then you still have to multiply this with this. So it's negative 3, negative 3x plus 4. So let's carry on. You get negative 12x plus 16. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9x. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12, plus 4 is minus 8. So that's going to be your answer. Let's do the same thing for FG. That's the next question. it's f of g of x. And now that g of x is this thing, that goes into this f. 4 over negative 2x minus 3. How do you plug in such a complicated thing into f? Well, you do the two-step procedure, which is to copy down the definition of f. And then, but when you see an x, you put a blank, okay? And only when you copied everything correctly, then you write in whatever that you're trying to plug in. So 4 over negative 2x minus 3 is what you get. Okay? Number only gets multiplied to the top, so you get negative 2 over negative 12 over negative 2x minus 3 plus 4. This time, what should I multiply to top and bottom? What should I multiply to top and bottom here?
Negative 2x minus 3.
Negative 2x minus 3. That's the one that you have to multiply to kill this guy. And that's going to be positive 4 plus 6 on top. And you get negative 12 plus 4 times negative 2x minus 3. Let's see where that leads us to. 4x plus 6. And then 4 times negative 2 is negative 8x. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12, and you have another negative 12, so it's going to be negative 24. And normally you would just stop here, but you just have to do one more because all of these numbers are even, right? So what could you do? You can divide top and bottom by 2, and you get 2x plus 3 on top, and you get negative 4x minus 12 on the bottom. Okay, this question is about filling in the table for g. Given this table on f, what can you gather about g? If g of x is negative 4 times f of negative 3x plus 5. So let's think about this. And the trick is to set whatever that's inside f. So look at this thing right here. That one. We take that one. And you keep setting that as these numbers. And that's the only thing you have to know. Once you do that, then everything else follows. So let me explain what I mean by that. Negative 3x should be set to equal to negative 6, right? Okay, what's x?
3.
Divided by negative 3 both sides, you get x equals to 2. Now, you put 2 here, and that means you have to figure out what g of 2 is. Agreed? Right. Since I have 2 here. So let's ask what g of 2 is. G of 2, according to this definition here, is negative 4 times f of negative 3 times negative 2 plus 5. Do you agree? All I did was I just took this definition and plugged in 2. Oh,
Oh yeah, exactly.
positive 2. Right? All I did was I just took that definition and plugged in 2. But what is that? That's negative 4. Negative 3 times 2 is?
6.
Negative 6 plus 5. And it's not a coincidence that you end up using f of negative 6, which is 5. Because that's the reason why we did this calculation. Okay? We were just figuring out what x has to be so that when you plug in, you end up with f of negative 6. And as the table says, f of negative 6 is 5.
Negative 15.
So you end up with negative 15 if you calculate this. So we put this in. Now if you understood this, then everything else is really easy. But let me just do one more, and then we'll quickly fill the other one. So if you have negative 3x equals to 33, dividing by negative 3 gives you x equals to negative 11, right? So we put negative 11, and then ask, what is g of negative 11? Well, according to the definition there, it's negative 4 times f of negative 3 times negative 11 plus 5. Negative 3 times negative 11 is?
30.
F of 33. And what's f of 33?
Negative 14.
Negative 14. So you put negative 4 times negative 14 plus 5, which is positive 56 plus 5, so it's going to be 61. So you get 61. Okay, and now I'm not even going to write down the equations. This should be done in your head. So you can take negative 21, divide by negative 3, that gives you 7. So if you plug in g of 7, it's going to be negative 4 times f of negative 21, whose value is negative 8. So negative 8 times negative 4 gives you positive 32 plus 5, that's going to be 37. Okay. All right. Am I losing you here? What should be here? 15 is equal to negative 3x. What's x? Negative 5. So when you plug in negative 5, it'll be f of 15, which is negative 11. Negative 11 times negative 4 is positive 44. Plus 5, that's going to be 49. Done. So 4 we have to skip. We didn't do even or odd.
Is the test going to be long?
I counted that. It's 15 questions I counted.
Oh.
You just get nervous, right?
Okay, number 5. Draw the graph of the equation of this function. And you have to include intercepts and vertex and all that. Right? Okay, so let's first find the intercept. How do you find the x-intercept?
Equal y is 0.
Y as 0, so it's going to be negative x squared plus x plus 2 equals to 0. And I don't like having a minus, so let's multiply minus everywhere. That gives you x squared minus x minus 2 equals to 0. And then if you factor this, what do you get? X minus 2, x plus 1 equals to 0. So that you get x equals to 2 and x equals to negative 1 as your x-intercepts. How do you get the y-intercept? Set x as 0, so you get y equals to negative 0 squared plus 0 plus 2, which is 2. So that's your y-intercept. Now you have to do the vertex. How do you do the vertex? What's the formula? What's the formula for the vertex? Negative
Negative b over 2.
b over 2a. What's our b?
X.
No, it's the number in front of x, which is 1.
1.
What's a?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. So it's going to be positive 1/2. But that's only going to be your x-coordinate of the vertex, right? But the k has to be evaluated by the function at h. So we have to plug in 1/2 in here, so that's going to be negative 1/2 squared plus 1/2 plus 2. This will be negative 1/4. 1/2 is 2 over 4, and 2 is 8 over 4. 2 plus 8 is 10. 10 minus 1 is 9, so you get 9 over 4. So we have the vertex as 1/2 comma 9 over 4. All right, so let's do this. Negative 1 and positive 2 are the x-intercepts as shown here. Positive 2 is going to be your y-intercept, so the parabola has to go through these 3 points. And we know that the parabola is opening this way, right, because of this minus in front, right? And also at 1/2, which by the way is like the midpoint between these two. So, you know, if you forgot the vertex formula, then you can just take the average of the x-intercepts. It's going to be giving you the vertex, right? Because of the symmetry, right? The entire thing should be symmetric over this 1/2 axis. So that's your axis of symmetry. And 9 over 4 is slightly over 2, so this will be a point. That'll be your vertex, which is 1/2 comma 9 over 4. So that's the graph of the quadratic equation. Now, I don't have time to write all the questions down. This is a word problem, so I'll just read it to you. A ball is thrown, and as you know, ball, when it's up in the air and it comes down, it gives you a parabolic shape. And the height of the ball at time x is given by this. And the question is, what's the max height it attains, and when does it get to that height? So simply the question is asking for the vertex. And most work problems for quadratic equations, if you see a quadratic equation with work problem, it's about the vertex. Yeah. Rarely it might be about x-intercept and y-intercept, but in most cases, there are more cases where it's just about the vertex. So all you have to do for this is to find h equals to negative b over 2a. Tell me what b is.
8.
8. What's a?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. Negative, negative cancel, so you have 8 over 4, which is 2. Okay, how do you get the y-coordinate of the vertex? You evaluate the f at this value here, right? So it's negative 2 times 2 squared plus 8 times 2 plus 5, and that's going to give you 13. The unit was in feet. Okay, question 7 we skip. Okay. And then question 8 says, the polynomial like this, and it's asking for the end behavior. And end behavior has to do with the order of the polynomial. If you have p squared, this is cubed by the way, so p cubed. If you have p squared, p cubed, what's the order of this polynomial? P times p squared is p cubed. P cubed times p cubed is p to the 6. This is order 6. Now if you have an even degree polynomial, then the end behavior is always either this or this, right? Which one is it for us?
It's negative, so.
It's negative in the front, so it must be going down, right? So you know that the end behavior should be this and this. Furthermore, we have that 4, negative 3, and positive 2 are your x-intercepts, because that's when this function p, fp becomes 0, right? So these are the x-intercepts. You put those numbers on the number line in order. Negative 3 should come first, and then that's 2, and that's 4, right? Okay. And here's the important piece of information. The order on the top tells you whether the graph bounces back or goes through. That's because if you have an even number, then even if p is bigger than 3 or less than bigger than negative 3 or less than negative 3, even if there's a sign change going through those transitions, the square ignores the sign change. So the graph just bounces back. Now what that means, so let me just say this. This will make it go through, so pass through. This one bounces back because it's even. 2 is even, okay? Then 2, this one is cubed, so it's odd, so it goes through, passes through. Okay, so this is odd, even. This is number 1, so it's odd, right? So this is what you do. You know that the end behavior is this, so that the graph should come from down. And it has to reach negative 3 because that's the x-intercept. Now should it bounce back or go through? It has to bounce back, so you go down. But at some point you have to return to 2 because that's another point that the graph has to go through, okay? Now, should it go through 2 or should it bounce back? Pass through, that's what I said, right? So it goes through, right? And then, but then it has to come back to 4, right? And should it pass through or bounce back? Yeah. So that's the answer. Now, some professors actually, they ask that if the graph has cube or more, then it also has to be like tangential briefly and then you go up. But I'm not going to be that rigorous on that one. As long as your graph passes through, I'll give you full credit. So that's the correct answer for this. Okay. All right. Last question. Okay, how do you find the inverse function?
You switch
Switch x and y, but there's no y to switch. So what do you do?
Multiply that.
No, you replace the function by y. That's how you start, okay? That's the first thing. That's step one. Introduce y. Introduce y, okay? And then only when you have y, you can switch x and y. So step two, x and y get switched. So anytime you see a y, you put x. Anytime you see an x, you put y. And what's step three? That's the hardest step, right? What's step three? You solve for y. So you have you have this equation, and because it's a fraction and we hate fractions, so we multiply negative 4y minus 1 both sides so that they cancel away, right? And you multiply this out, you get negative 4xy minus x equals to negative 2y plus 3. Okay, we got rid of the annoying fractions, but we still have to solve for y. But I see a double. There's a y there, there's a y. How do we handle this? We move the y's to one side and the ones without the y's to the other side. So this has to come over here, this has to go over there. So let's see what that gives us. Negative 4xy plus 2y is equal to plus x plus 3. Because minus x, when you move over, is plus x. Okay, now what?
Divided by x.
No, not divide by x. You have to factor the y out first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And what this achieved was, previously the challenge was that we were seeing doubles. Here's a y, here's a y. That's no good. But once you factor y, I only see a single y. How great is that, right? Now how do you solve it?
Now you
You just divide the entire thing to the other side. So the answer would be that h inverse of x is x plus 3 divided by negative 4x plus 2. Okay, so that's the answer.